Hello, everyone. Welcome to another AskWxm podcast in which we look to answer your questions to the best of our ability. Remember, you can get in touch with us using the hashtag AskWxm. That's the hashtag AskWxm on Blue Sky or Twitter. And we can have a look at what we can see and pick some out for this podcast. Although, of course, remember as well that the primary purpose of the hashtag is to get in touch with us on match day. So if you have any questions to throw at us during Wrexham matches while we're commentating on the stream, please don't be shy. Okay, let's get cracking with our first tweet. Ran, hi Ran, saying, absolutely love the feeling of seeing Chomp out there. Can we keep him as we go up, please? Knock on wood. At this point, a Chomp sighting triggers my nostalgia centre. Yeah, Mark Howard has been really a mainstay for us this season, hasn't he? We've had to fall on him twice, and I mean, it's fantastic, isn't it? The way that he keeps himself ready. I know that sounds obvious, but I'm thinking of David James, very famous English goalkeeper, who came on as a substitute for England in Sweden and had a nightmare. I'm pretty sure that was the game when Ibrahimovic scored an overhead kick from 40 yards out past him. And afterwards, he said it was because he was on the bench, but he wasn't ready. He'd spent the previous night up in his hotel room playing on his PlayStation and just wasn't mentally prepared for coming on. Well, you won't get that with Mark Howard, will you? Because, I mean, it's not easy for any substitute necessarily to come in and get the rhythm of the game. With a goalkeeper in particular, you can get caught pretty cold if you come on during a match. But Howard, I mean, fair play to him, is such a good professional, such a good example. And when required, yeah, he's done ever so well coming in for us, hasn't he? Unflappable in goal. And so, yeah, the second part of what you're saying, Gran, do you think we can keep hold of him? Well, I think to a great extent that's going to be down to him, isn't it? I mean, he started this season as a number 3, so he was happy with that. He's obviously happy with the goalkeeping unit. Just listen to Yours, Mine, Away, his excellent podcast on goalkeeping. And he loves that camaraderie, doesn't he? That team ethic that the goalkeepers have. And he really brings out beautifully how goalkeepers work together. And so, yeah, he does he seems happy at the start of the season to do that. If he wants to keep playing and he's still happy with that situation, then who knows? Maybe we'll keep hold of him. Because let's be honest, I mean, he's not showing signs of being completely over the hill. And as a third choice keeper, Championship or League One, he's clearly well up to the job. So, well, we should certainly, no matter how long it lasts, I think, relish the fact that we've got such an excellent professional on our books who is able to do such a brilliant job for us. Now, next one, Jenny Lightning. It's a nice one, this. There are so many complications with international clearance and transfer windows. And so she asks, do players need international clearance every time they switch countries, or can they go to their home country without one? For example, a Welshman goes to England from Wrexham means international clearance is needed, but a Welshman going to Wrexham from England equals not needed. No, I'm afraid not. It's a nice idea, but it's purely about which country your club is in when you leave it and which club you're going to. It's nothing to do with your nationality. Okay, let's broaden this out a little bit, shall we? If you're playing for Paris Saint-Germain and you want to sign for Ajax, you're going from France to the Netherlands. Doesn't matter what your nationality is, whether you're French or Dutch, you have to get international clearance, because international clearance is all about the player's registration between one club and another. Which club owns that registration? So nationality has nothing to do with it. The reason I went into Europe to explain that, and although it applies throughout the world, so if you're in Uruguay and you want to go to Brazil, it'll be exactly the same. The reason I went outside of Britain, then, should I say, is that, of course, the UK is, in political and geopolitical terms, a country. My passport says UK. It does not say Welsh. Now, obviously in football, that's not the case. There are 4 separate countries in the UK for footballing purposes. So, yeah, it's an exchange from one FA, if you like, to another. So the fact that you are in England and move to Wales, like Sam Smith did and J. Rodriguez, means you've got to get international clearance, even though we play in the same league, because we come under the jurisdiction of the Welsh FA. It doesn't matter. If that player was Welsh, they would still need international clearance, I'm afraid. So, nice try, but there's no loophole there. But I admire you for asking and seeing if you can't just test that out a little bit. But yeah, no loophole, I'm afraid. So, we're stuck with getting international clearance every time, which of course is not something other clubs have to do. And I mentioned it to Andy Morrell, I think, at Port, where was it? Last home game, I think, when we had to... We brought in Andy Bishop on a month's loan, but by the time we finally got international clearance, he could only play a couple of games because it ate up like a week and a half of his 4-week loan. Just getting the clearance. It does seem quite random. Oh dear, it's complicated. So, next up, Vic Schultz. Can you give us a bit more info on some of the players on our side that we don't see as often? A few names I don't know, and that message Vic sent, although I failed to see it at the time, was during the Port Vale match. So let's have a little look at some of those players who were in that game, perhaps, or weren't in that game, but are certainly in the first team squad, who maybe a lot of people might not completely recognise. Well, I mean, first things first, of course, there's the youth players. So Harry Ashfield was outstanding at Vale Park, wasn't he? Had a tremendous game and scored his first professional goal for us. Now, Harry, of course, is like I said, a youth player and has come through the ranks. We've seen other players... pardon me. We've seen other players come through the youth team this season, some of whom have gone off on loan, like Callum Edwards. Aaron James has gone off on loan. He's come through the youth system and he's had a cracking time of it in the Virtue Trophy, the Bristol Street Motors Trophy, as was. So these are young players coming through. Harry Dean's another one who were youth prospects from within Wrexham, coming through the same route that Max Cleworth came through. Then, of course, you've got some other players. We didn't play in that game in particular, but Josh Adam, who is a young player that we were able to bring in after the summer transfer window because he's under that age line, which means he doesn't have to be registered. And he's had a couple of games in the Virtue Trophy as well. And looks like a neat, tidy midfield player. He's come from Manchester City, so obviously he's got the bona fides. It's just he hasn't got much experience, so Wrexham would want to sort of bring that through a little bit more. I mean, other players that have been sort of involved in the first team that maybe might not have been so recognisable in that match. Well, on the bench was Luke McNicholas, of course, and Luke came to us at the start of last season, Northern Irish player. He's played, although he's young, he's played quite a bit in Northern Ireland and he looks a real prospect. And he played our games in the Virtue Trophy in goal last season and looked excellent. He's really neat and technical and tidy and tight in his approach. We loaned him out to Rochdale this season and he was playing regularly in the National League till he got an injury, unfortunately. By all accounts, he was doing well. So, let's hope that he's fit now and will spend the rest of the season with us. And yeah, let's hope that he's gained a bit from that spell at Rochdale. Okie doke, let's have a look at the next one then, shall we? And it's Vic again. And this is an interesting one for me, and I'm not sure I can give the full answer, but I can try. Big question for me. Is there a reason the videos of games that I follow don't have the commentary? Also, is there a reason why some games have the full commentary available on places like SoundCloud, but others don't? I often want to watch them again, but can't. Right, well, the I follow one is the bit that I'm not 100% sure on, I'll be honest. But as I understand it, quite a lot of the stuff's automated by iFollow, and it kind of depends on what gets picked up. I'm speculating a little bit on that one. I can answer directly the question about SoundCloud because I upload those, and it often depends. Oh gosh, I've got to make a confession here. Sometimes I forget. I'm a bad man. I'm sorry. I'll try to keep remembering. I sometimes feel a bit reluctant with the women's games because that's a TV commentary rather than a radio commentary, and I think do people actually want to listen back to that? Because by their nature, there will be pauses in them. But I have put a few up, and people seem happy with it, so maybe I'll make sure I do. I probably got a couple I haven't published yet, so maybe I'll throw a batch of them on, shall I? Now then, next one, and this is an interesting one from Wrexham fan. With this season being more challenging than last, what have we learned to apply next season? Well, I'm gonna put a condition on this answer first. Depends what happens this season. You know, the lessons you learn for staying in League One will be different from the lessons you learn from moving up to the Championship. Let's say we don't go up first, because I think that's going to give us more to talk about. If we don't go up, for me, the big thing I've really learned is we don't need to be scared of the top end of League One. I mean, we've just come straight in and immediately imposed ourselves. So, yeah, for me, that is a big plus. It doesn't feel like this is a flash in the pan. This feels like, yeah, well, we've been saying this for a couple of years, haven't we? Parkinson, when he came in the National League, was clearly recruiting players from 2 leagues higher up. He was recruiting good League One players to play in the National League, and he added to that squad, improved that squad when we went up. So it does make logical sense that we've landed in League One. We've hit the ground running because these players are players who've proven themselves. I mean, to give an example of 2 players who've just left us, Anthony Ford and James Jones are squeezed out the squad now because we keep bringing in higher and higher caliber players. They've done nothing wrong. It's just that we keep bringing in very good players, and so something has to give. Not only have they done nothing wrong, they both are well-established League One players. So, you know, we're bringing in these League One quality players, but still gratifying to hit League One and then find, oh yeah, we're right up there, because that's where we should be. So I guess a key thing maybe we've learned in that regard is trust Parkinson, trust the transfer system, and the transfer system that we apply, should I say, because they do look very deeply using scouting, using data into the players. They look very closely as to how they'll fit into the system. Parkinson is very eager to get a handle on them as a person as well, and trust that because it's worked exceptionally well. Obviously, there have to be tweaks. There's a difference between getting up from the National League and getting up from League One, obviously. But I think one of the main things I think we all need to learn is have faith in this. We have owners who are committed to getting us as high up as you can. We've got a manager and his coaching staff who are really high level, who are achieving results, both short term and long term, and therefore trust this system. You know, a lot of people coming in at the start of this season saying they'll be happy for consolidation. A lot of people at the moment seem to be saying they're scared of going up because the Championship's a big jump. Well, you know, do you just want us to stay in League One forever? No, the club does. So, you know, embrace this. It's quite ironic, actually, when I was younger, and I never bought this, but often fans would say, oh, the club doesn't want to get promoted, or it costs too much money to go to a higher division or different things. And I never agreed with that. I mean, okay, maybe sometimes they could have invested and didn't. But, you know, I don't think for a second the motive was don't go up. The moment you go up, your investment's worth more, isn't it? You're getting bigger crowds, you've got bigger sponsorship deals. These days, bigger TV deals. It's quite hard, unless you're running a club as some sort of weird money laundering exercise. Careful what I say. That has happened to clubs occasionally, but not us. Then why would you not want to be more successful? Why would you not want to go on and do better? It makes no sense. And now, weirdly, we have fans saying this when the club clearly is laser focused on getting as high up at the EFL as possible. I don't know. It's a bit of a strange one. What else have we learned? And what have we learned if we go up? I don't know if I can answer that really. I think it's if we stay down, what can we learn about League One? I would look elsewhere, perhaps, what we could learn if we go up in terms of, well, the fact that clubs like Ipswich and Luton have gone straight through into the Premier League. But then that is a very difficult thing to pull off without damage. Well, say damage, on the pitch damage. I mean, look at, okay, Southampton manager loses his job because he got him promoted and then they couldn't cope in Premier League. If he lost in the playoffs, he'd probably still be in a job. Ironic, but true. So whether there's something we can learn from that. When I say about damage, obviously financially not, and some clubs basically just yo-yo for a bit because they get so much money from 1 year in the Premier League and then their parachute payments that they're able to bounce back. And I guess they accrue enough over a few years to really be able to establish themselves on a firm footing. But I think if we look at teams like Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth, I think we're going to have a good close look at exactly how they've done it. Trouble is, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. So maybe that's another thing about learning something. Situations are all different. I mean, Bournemouth established themselves by spending extremely astutely. Look at the players they bring in. They're a bit like Brighton and Brentford's. They're like Parkinson. They get a lot of bang for their buck. They bring in players who really perform for them, and certainly in terms of the sort of fees they're paying for them, overperform. But then Forest actually are the opposite, aren't they? You recall back, Forest, when they came up, immediately brought in over 20 players. I mean, it was madness. But then look where they are now. Maybe it wasn't madness. It felt like madness. But this crazy revolving door approach eventually has settled down into something that looks sustainable. So maybe the big lesson we should learn is there are no lessons to learn. Life's like that. It's a series of random things. Like Steinbeck's working title of Mice and Men. Something happened. Who knows why? I did the who knows why, just so you know. Chris Malika on the Port Vale game said, how come there's no fans at the game? Jarvis said, because I'd shouted oi shift at them all. I did the last time we played them. Yeah, that's true. And the crowd was down. Did I take 200 Port Vale fans off the attendance? Only they can know that. No, it was quite simply, Chris, that, I mean, as we've talked about previously, that the Virtue Trophy doesn't get big crowds, never has done. Since the takeover, we've been getting the biggest crowds ever in the history of that tournament, which shows some 7,000 when we played in it the first time last season. And that's absurd. That's absurd. So that's a hell of a crowd. So, yeah, it doesn't attract people until the very late stages, frankly. Day out at Wembley will bring people in. But that game wasn't empty. It was just they only opened one stand. So you couldn't see fans. Well, no, they opened two stands. One for Port Vale fans, and that was on the side of the camera, so you couldn't see them. And one stand for the Wrexham fans. So they were the only ones you could see. The other two stands, as in the time we played Port Vale in the group stage, were empty. So that's the reason. Right, next up. Liquid Nicola asks, and this is the under-19s women's game that was played last Friday, and Wrexham under-19s beat TNS 3-0. It was brilliant. And Nicola asks, hi Mark, is Ryan Barnett's sister, playing for Wrexham? If so, are there any other records of siblings playing for Wrexham, either the women's team or men's team academy? Right, well, yes, she was. And ironically, Ryan being a right wing-back, she was playing as a left-sided centre-back. Played very well, in fact. Really comfortable on the ball. Quick, surprisingly enough. Wonder where, that comes from. Yeah, they're both quick. And she looks really good. She's, like I say, she's still a young prospect. She hasn't played in the first team yet. But that would be fascinating, wouldn't it? I mean, we've had Mia, of course, play for the women's team, and her dad's playing for the men's team. But you said specifically siblings. Now, I think I've got an exhaustive list of all the siblings. They're all in the men's team. Remember, the women's team, in terms of their records, officially were formed in 2018 when it became a fully incorporated part of the club. So there's not that long. So I may have, someone may have escaped my notice, probably somebody obvious, but I can't think of a brother-sister combination in the men's and women's team. However, there are a few for the men's teams. So, for example, club legend Joey Jones, absolute hero, came through in the 70s, left us for Liverpool, won the European Cup, came back to Wrexham, then went to Chelsea, Huddersfield, then came back to Wrexham again to finish his career. Lots of caps for Wales, absolute legendary bloke. Every time I interview the past players for the Final Whistle Weekly, they always, without me even asking them to, volunteer how wonderful a guy Joey is. Now, his brother Frankie was also a defender, and he played a bit for us when we were in the Championship, and actually came back briefly as well later too. And he was also, like Joey, a no-nonsense centre-back, also like Joey, an absolutely lovely guy with a great sense of humour. So Frankie was a good player. He played a few games for us. If we'd been a worse team, he'd have played more, quite frankly, but he came into us, came through the youth system when we were at the highest point you've ever been, which is sort of unfortunate for him. I always remember he had a weird sort of hitch kick clearance. I think it was because he liked using one foot particularly. So if the ball was in the air dropping on the wrong foot, he had this really interesting sort of hitch kick technique where he'd sort of jump up in the air to get the right foot underneath it and then volley it clear. Oh, Frankie. Okay, other brothers. How about Jim and Jeff Whitley? Now, Jim came to Wrexham at the start of the 21st century. Both of them Northern Irish internationals. Both of them came through the Man City youth setup, and both of them played plenty of games for Man City. Jim was an excellent servant for us. He came in, he could play either defensive midfield, and he played there when we got promoted in 2003. A really steady, good reader of the game, good user of the ball. And then when we sold the Edwardses, Paul and Carlos, our two wing backs, Jim then started playing on the right as a wing back. He often, usually I think I'd say his main position for Man City was right back, so right wing back he plays, and he's a very, again, safe pair of hands, good quality player, didn't tend to waste the ball, very sound defensively, a fine player for us. If I remember correctly, should have checked this beforehand, I think he played exactly 199 games for us, so a really good servant for us. Jeff was more of a creative player. He came to us on loan and looked sensational. It was only a short loan. You could have short loans then, not just between the windows like you do now. And then he came back to us permanently when we were fighting against relegation from League Two. And he had some important interventions to make in that as well. Ultimately, we stayed up, but he left at the end of that season. Going back to the 50s, Peter Jackson was appointed manager of Wrexham, and he brought his two sons in with him. And weirdly, they both played the same number of games for Wrexham. They didn't last that long. Peter Jackson went to Bradford City, took them both with him, and they actually both had much more significant careers with Bradford City. So a couple of players there whose, let's be honest, their careers were inextricably linked to each other and their dad. But the fact that they played so much for Bradford shows that it wasn't just nepotism that got them the chance. More recently, in the National League, we had Mark Williams, who was, well, he played in the Football League, actually, as did Mike, I beg your pardon, his brother, just before we went down. Mark was an excellent striker, little striker, low centre of gravity, as the cliche goes, and he made an amazing impact in our first season in National League. Looked like he might fire us straight back up to the Football League. He was excellent. He had a terrific run of goal scoring. He made a really good partnership with Jeff Louis up front, who was a big centre forward. Until Williams, in an innocuous, well, was it even a challenge? He was chasing the back bars, broke a bone in his foot and was out for the rest of the season. And Louis, you immediately saw how much Louis needed Mark Williams because his influence faded as well. Williams was flying. He got to around 20 goals, then was out for the season, and we fell apart. Williams did come back, never got that form again up front, sadly. Played a bit in attacking midfield and was a good player there. But yeah, sadly, that injury really seemed to be a pivotal point for him. His brother Mike played at left back at first, then at centre back. Really good defender, bit of pace about him, good passer of the ball, and he also played for a few seasons in the early days of the National League. Couple of really good players for us in those years. And then, of course, slightly later than that, Connor Jennings and James Jennings. Connor Jennings comes to us, well, having already destroyed us once. He was on loan at Macclesfield, scored a hat-trick past us. We bring him in 2014 as a striker alongside Louis Moult, an excellent-looking combination. And Jennings certainly played his part. But maybe he was better the following season when Gary Mills converted him into a centre midfielder and made him captain. Really good player, Connor Jennings, really good all-rounder. He came up against us a number of times as well, but a quality striker, quality creative attacking midfielder as well, and a player who always threw himself into the challenge, as did his brother, who came afterwards, James Jennings, terrific left-back, full of spirit and heart, would drive forwards and get goals as well, scored a wonderful free kick at Harrogate, but he'd get forwards in open play and score a really shrewd signing. Two top blokes, top players, and players who not only had quality, but were terrifically committed to the cause. And I can't talk about brothers, of course, without finishing with the Robertses. Neil Roberts, of course, well known, Mia's dad. Really strong striker, brilliant with his back to goal, was really good at bringing players in and was a good finisher as well, to the extent that ultimately he earned a move to a higher division. He came back near the end of his career and was an outstanding captain for us when we were in terrible trouble. We were fighting against relegation, like I said, with the Jeff Whitley's era, to the National League. He was superb. He was our skipper. He was far too good for that level. And bizarrely, tragically, ludicrously, our manager, Brian Little, at the end of the season, released him. Roberts wanted to stay and help Wrexham get back up. Roberts was then the only player of the season ever to then be released. Astonishing decision, which I don't care what reason I might or might not hear. It was nonsense. Roberts, the club through and through, totally committed. And when I realised he wanted to stay, I was thrilled. I couldn't believe it when we didn't hold on to him. He played for Wales. Stephen Roberts, his brother, was a centre-back. I think if he'd had more luck with injuries, I think he'd have played for Wales as well. A superb central defender. Always so calm, always seemed to have time on the ball. Strong, rugged, scored a rocket at York that springs straight into my mind. But he was a really good defender. Superb for us when we got promoted in 2003. Superb for us at the Millennium Stadium when we won the LDV Vans Trophy in 2005. Really good passer of the ball, long passer of the ball too. And he also earned a move up to higher levels. Like I said, if it hadn't have been for injuries, I think he would have achieved even more again. There are lots of other combinations of brothers, certainly, who played for Wrexham. There's just a taster of them. Cliff Lloyd, who was did everything for the club, manager, secretary, player, coach, everything. He was injured and missed a game, and his brother Jackie came in. And that was the one game he played for Wrexham. I quite like that one just for the symmetry of it. But yeah, there's quite a few going back. George and Phil Spruce, and yeah, quite a lot. And his father-son combinations too. George Godding, our keeper, in the first ever game he played in the Football League in 1921. His son then played for us, also in goal in the 50s. I could go on. Oh, I usually do go on. But on this occasion, I will move along a bit. Let's see what's next. Right, I've been looking forward to this. David Gehring asks, what's the story of the Crawley's front of kit sponsor, Rent-A-Kill? Some sort of South London assassination service? I love that. That is beautiful. We don't talk about the service, all right? We just don't talk about it. Keep stum. No, it's not. In fact, Rent-A-Kill's a big international company, and I think you're in the States, Dave. They operate in America as well. They are pest disposal. What's the word? Pest, not pest, pest removal? Pest offing? I don't know. It's like a Fat Tony in The Simpsons. Do you want me to kill him gangland style or execution style? With a rat, obviously, you know. Listen to your heart, says Joe Mantegna. So, yeah, weird and slightly intimidating name. But, oh my word, thank you for opening the box for me to talk about weird sponsors. I'm sorry. I'm going to indulge myself now. Right, if you're listening to this, you can see the pictures on video. I'll have to put up a slideshow, okay? But, right, firstly, the first thing that came into my head when I read that question was Scarborough in the 80s had a shirt which was banned. The Football League stopped them from wearing it. Sponsored by Black Death Vodka. Sounds delicious, doesn't it? So they wore it, but it was banned. They still sell them now. So you can still buy them. Black Death Vodka, and underneath the strapline, drink in peace. Nice. Similar sort of theme is that Eintracht Frankfurt have a skull and bones on their shirt. And that is because, brilliantly, they have been sponsored, and both with about 20 years between them, like in the early 90s and later, by local band and big fans, original punk band or post-punk band, Die Totenhosen, and that's their logo, Die Totenhosen. I can assure you, I'm of the right vintage to have listened to a bit of them. Loud industrial punk, I think is how I describe it. And Die Totenhosen, of course, those of you who speak German, Ran, who asked the first question, will be fully on top of this, means the dead trousers. And any band called the Dead Trousers, yeah, they're all right by me. How about Milan in the 80s being sponsored by Pooh? Yep, this is going to get quite childish, isn't it? So the picture we've got on the screen, we've got legendary Scottish centre-forward Joe Jordan in his Milan shirt with Pooh across the front. Not like in the IT Crowd when Roy goes on that date with Alice Lowe. Pooh. And Pooh, with an H on the end, is apparently a jeans brand, or according to their logo, a jeans system in Italy. Pooh, everybody. Millwall had on their shirts the weather in Norwegian, because live TV was, how can I put this, a low rent satellite channel at the start of satellite broadcasting, who did things to shock and, shall we say, target a certain type of post-pub audience. So one of the two famous things they did was topless darts, yeah, and this, the weather in Norwegian, where basically, well, it does what it says on the shirt. They read the weather in Norwegian. It was all a bit tongue-in-cheek, shall we say. Now then, Getafe, the Spanish team on the outskirts of Madrid, they pulled off a beauty in the 90s. They were sponsored by Burger King. So on the front, they had the Burger King logo, which actually worked quite well. The blue trim on the edge of the Burger King logo is the same colour as Getafe's sort of quite darkish blue shirts. But the real genius was that on the inside of the shirt on the front is a picture of the character that was then used in the adverts as the Burger King. And it was upside down. So if you celebrated by putting your shirt over your head, it looked like you had the Burger King's head instead of your head. Genius or stupidity? It's a fine line, friends. Just on a slightly more prosaic level, I just like that Cardiff is sponsored by Ken Thorne World of Cars. Good old Ken. He had a lot of cars. And also one I always just stick in my mind was Rochdale. And if you're looking at it, just look at the quality of that shirt. Look at the build. But they had this ugly square, white square in the middle of their shirt with a badly drawn watering can and squeezed in. And I think that's a key part of the aesthetic. It is really squeezed in. It's uneven and looks like they've tried to put far too many letters into it. Is all in one garden centre. They've even put a line across the bottom to reduce the space they can fit the font into. It's a work of art in the field of the sort of drawings that your kids do that you put on the fridge. And yet it is a company's logo and Rochdale. As I recall, it had this on the front for quite a while as well. I just like the homemade nature of it. Now, the next one is a Greek team who, their kit looks perfectly all right, but they were sponsored by Salina, which was their local brothel there. I'll just let that sit with you. I mean, it was a legal brothel, and they said partly it was a protest against the Greek FA not giving them enough money, so they have to take sponsorship where they can, in a very high sort of minded tone. But yeah, there you go. Now then, Barcelona. We need to talk about Barcelona. Barcelona, oh man. I mean, don't get me started on the weird intricacies of their financial jiggery-pokery, as they, in their phraseology, activate levers to keep them supposedly under the limit for the Spanish League's transfer regulations. But Barcelona like to present themselves as being very, again, high-minded and moral. They feel they're on some sort of crusade. I don't think it really cuts, if I'm honest. They're a big club who wants to be part of the Super League, and we're one of the last ones to drop out of it. They like painting this idea of them being some sort of idealistic white knight of football, but it doesn't stack up. And, there have been a lot of cases lately with the way they've been run ending up in court. So, let's not go down that puritanical view that often. But for a long time, they refused to have a sponsor on their shirts. And again, it linked in with this notion of, we don't have a sponsor on our shirts because our shirt is pure. And also that, it's a symbol of Catalan nationalism, although that was never something they would say too openly. Because again, I feel the club were always quite happy to take the benefit of people who saw them as romantic because they are Catalan and seen as the symbol of Catalan independence, and portrayed under Franco as the resistance club almost, with Real Madrid Franco's club, which is a massive caricature of the truth. Not that they weren't badly treated on some occasions. Although it's got to be said, like I said, the club are happy to take the benefit of that, but they actually don't openly talk about Catalan independence because they're also aware that it's not necessarily something that would do them that much good. Not least, Catalonia goes independent. Suddenly Barcelona go from playing Real Madrid to play once a season to Espanyol and Girona being their only real rivals. So, Catalan League wouldn't fulfill Barcelona's needs. So, think of that what you will. When they finally put a sponsor on their shirt, it was UNICEF, and they said, yeah, it's a charitable act. We're finally going to do it, but we're going to give all the money to UNICEF. Aren't we good? Okay, but it felt like it was just going to be a little sop before they actually put proper sponsorship on. The fact that their next sponsor was a Qatari state-funded foundation left a poor taste. And the ones I'm showing on the screen are that they've really gone very quickly into throwing themselves into the selling your soul element of sponsorship. So this one has got like a red lips of a tongue sticking out because Rolling Stones bought the rights to sponsor their shirt for a match when a new album came out. It's not a great look. Viz, however, is a great look. Blythe Spartans, our friends, loom bizarrely large in our history considering how little we played them. Up from the northeast, and so Viz, what you might call an adult comic, shall we say. It's very funny. It was heyday, really. It was the early 90s. But lots of very funny stuff in it, and some that was a bit too near the knuckle, perhaps. But they sponsored Blythe Spartans, and I think that just looks quite cool, and it feels like a good fit too. But I've got to say, taking things to an extreme, Atletico Madrid was sponsored by Columbia Pictures, and basically would wear shirts with different sponsors every match, depending on which films they were bringing out. Some of them were all right, and some, like the one on the screen now, looked good too. So away kit advertising Spider-Man, which has a spider's web and a spider on it. Oh, that's quite cool, I think. However, lots of them looked just like they had just quick rectangular oblong transfers stuck on. Resident Evil 2 and Terminator, Rise of the Machines. Big Arnold Schwarzenegger picture on Fernando Torres' chest. Hellboy doesn't look too bad. Peter Pan does. That's a strange one, that, I reckon. Spanglish. I don't recall that film either. The best one, though, for my personal favourite, is Dos Rubias de Pelo en Pecho, which, of course, Spanish speakers know means the two blondes in inverted collars and in a different colour, with hair on their chests. That is the Spanish title of white chicks. So, yeah, I know. What a sponsorship deal. Oh, let's move on. Janie Lightning's got a nice one here. Who decides a player will get subbed off when injured on the pitch? The physio, the player, the manager, or all three? Well, when I first saw that, I thought, well, there's an obvious answer. And I realised there wasn't. I mean, if it's not injury related, obviously the manager and the coach is going to make that decision. But there is a bizarre exception to this, which I still can't get my head around, even as I think of it. What was it, 6-7 years ago? Chelsea in a League Cup final decided to bring their goalkeeper, Kepa, off. He's currently Bournemouth's goalkeeper, on loan from Chelsea. He signed a long-term contract. When he signed, he was the most expensive goalkeeper in the world, and he's supposed to be a superstar for them, but it hasn't worked out that way. They decided to substitute him, which is, of course, odd for a goalkeeper. Penalties were looming, and as sometimes managers do, they planned to bring on a different specialist keeper for the penalties. Kepa refused to come off. And succeeded in not coming off. What? I mean, I've never thought a player could do that. Once the manager has said you're coming off, they put the board up, that's that. They've done the paperwork. He refused to come off, and so after a lengthy hiatus, he stayed on the pitch and they carried on. It was just remarkable. So I guess I can't say it's the manager's, but I would say apart from that one case, the manager will decide. Obviously, if it's an injury, the physio will say, and you would hope that managers would take a physio's word on it, although there are times I think a manager desperate for a player to carry on and might not have the interest in the player's health held as highly as his interest in the result. And the player themselves, I mean, they can do. It really depends on the relationship between the player and the coach. I remember Wrexham playing a game at Chester, famous game in 97 when Carl Connolly scores 2 wonderful goals and we win 2-0. The one wonderful goal and the other one's straightforward, but it's still wonderful because it's against Chester. That Brian Carey felt a twinge and told the bench, and they removed him straight away because Carey was a sensible pro and he knew that what he was feeling was the beginnings of a muscle injury, and that if he carried on he'd be out for weeks, and if he came off he'd have a chance to actually deal with it. And so they like I say, a wise head, an experienced player and a sensible bloke. So when Brian Flynn saw that was happening, he brought him straight off and Wrexham won, and Carey didn't pick up a serious injury. So, yeah, no, there can be lots of different circumstances. That Kepa one is really the only one where you'd say the manager doesn't get that final say-so, I would argue, though. Podders 1981 says, I think the FAW needs to do something about the under-19 North League only having 4 teams, playing half the games compared to under-19 South. Can't be good for development. Maybe a dual registration with other teams, so if there's no under-19 game, they still have a game that weekend. Well, they have to play each other more than twice to try and make up the fixtures, but you're 100% right. It's not a very healthy situation. I like the dual registration idea. I like that idea that you can go to play for other clubs. It does happen in the men's game, lower down the ladder. In fact, strictly speaking, we could buy players outside the window on dual registration. Strictly speaking, a team could loan a player out and bring them back with a Virtue Trophy, strictly speaking. But yeah, that's a very interesting idea. And certainly, I mean, players need experience. Women's football in Wales is still at a fairly sort of nascent point in its development, and anything which can help to boost that development, I think, should be grabbed hold of with open arms. And out of the box thinking like that, I think, is the sort of thing that we need to try to accelerate things. I agree completely. And then I think this is the last one. John Craig asks, what's the limit on salaries for women players in the Adran Premier? Ruby Slippers replied, and I don't understand what this is. Are they allowed to supplement with Ko-Fi or Venmo? I don't know what that means. I shouldn't have read it. And John replies, or do like colleges here did before. NIL? NIL? Oh, I know nothing about American football. Congratulations, Philadelphia, though. Go Eagles, go Birds, and find the players jobs of supporters companies. Don't think, as far as I'm aware, there's no upper limit, and I don't. Oh, hang on, I was going to say that I'm sure that wouldn't be legal under European law, and I remembered. Oh yeah, Brexit. But no, there's no. I don't think there's any upper limits at all. Surely, I don't see how that would be enforceable, really. But having said that, I mean, it seems that being semi-professional is enforceable. Jobs with companies, well-meaning companies, I think is perfectly feasible, but I'm not aware of Wrexham doing that. But yeah, that's perfectly feasible, and I reckon that is it. Yes, it is. So, thank you very much for joining me again. That was great fun. I like doing these podcasts. They're a laugh. Keep the questions pouring in on the hashtag AskWxm, AskWxm on Blue Sky and Twitter. And with that, I am Mark Griffiths from Wrexham AFC. Good night.